Hello again. This is the video, the second part of coronavirus 2019 is at pandemic level. Okay, so we arrived at the history of 1580, where the first recorded pandemic. Now, after this period, there were six further pandemic. One happened like 1729, 1732, 1781, 1836, 1847, 1889. And the worst one was 1918, which was the Great Flu pandemic or pandemic. The first indication was when American soldiers began complaining of chills, headaches, and fever. Then, the following September, at a US Army barracks near Boston, soldiers started collapsing on parade, prompting their removal to the camp infirmary. So you can see that we have proper history, proper information about how the Great Flu pandemic happens since 1918. All governments, all armies, all organizations, health organizations, they know that these kind of pandemic can happen after first few hours or first few days. Especially now we have airplanes that travels from airports and carry a lot of people with them. So as the surgeons were recalled 2 hours after admission, they had the mahogany spots over the cheekbones, and a few hours later you can see the cyanosis extending from the ears and spread all over their face. Then few hours later the death come, and it is simply a struggle. So they were struggling for air until they suffocate. And here we are talking about around 675,000 American soldiers. Now, regarding the British, when they arrived at Dover from France, back from France, they became sick at Dover. They haven't even reached London. So at Dover, they became sick. And slowly, this virus killed 230,000 Britons. And in India alone, as it spread, 10 million it killed at that time in India, which means for today's number is like 100 million. All right? And worldwide, it killed up to 50 million. So nowadays, again I repeat, planes in a fraction of a time of 1918 can spread these viruses to 50 countries easily. I'll give you another example. February 2003, a Chinese doctor arrived at the Metropole Hotel in Hong Kong. And that was the SARS one, all right? So he was feeling unwell. He was harboring a new animal origin virus called SARS, which is short for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. On the same floor, around his room or near to his room, which was 913, 16 others caught the virus as he sneezed and he was coughing in the corridor. So within 24 hours, guests have been infected and they traveled to Vietnam, Singapore, and Canada. So around 29 countries were infected at that time, 2003, 1,000 dead after 4 months later. And that, at that time, flights were grounded or suspended. Okay? So the other important thing that you have to understand is that pandemics have always been associated with great panic. So always remember, pandemics lead to panics. So they start small, but their impact can be as dramatic as wars and natural disasters. And that's how they affect the world economy. And the game of fear starts. You see, the game of fear plays an important role by companies who wants to make money from the gloves and the masks that people put on their face and the medicine and any of that. here and there. So science gives us the ability to detect the pandemic right at the beginning and to take action to mitigate their impacts before they spread too widely. So I hope that this knowledge can help halt future outbreaks. Now, there has been many scientists that have spoken about these problems in the past, and no government seemed to learn, important lessons, and especially the Chinese government. So the doctors who warned the Chinese government about the spread of this coronavirus 2019, they ignored them. They neglected their advice. They professionally neglected the advice of professional doctors. And the Chinese intelligence threatened those doctors, and now worldwide we're suffering, and the economy is losing at least around $1 trillion in the next 3 months. That's the minimum, because China alone is going to lose $750 billion in the next month or 2 months. And now it's still in the peak. The peak is going to reach 2 months from now. And even if there's medicine, which is coming hopefully soon, it will not be commercially produced until after 2 months. So even if they discover one today, good medicine, it will not be properly used by countries and governments and hospitals except after 6 months. So you have to wait between 2, 3, and maximum up to 6 months to start using those, medicines properly. So you have to rely on herbal ones and so on and so forth. So please, world organizations, make sure that you do not allow China, and I mean China by the Chinese government, because the Chinese people are good and they're very kind and they are the victims. But the Chinese government and the political party there has to pay the price for this pandemic, regardless whether they were responsible for manufacturing it in labs or otherwise, or somebody leaking it from their labs. But because they kept the news about this virus as a secret, and they made parties in Wuhan, and then these people, they traveled from Wuhan all over the world. The rest of the world is suffering now, and there is sort of a serious economical price that many countries will have to pay for that. So I think that the Chinese government have to pay the bill. And thank you so much for listening, and please make sure you don't have fear, and make sure you understand that it's not as serious as SARS, this virus, although it's very new, and the death rate is 2% in comparison to SARS, which was 10%. Okay? Anyway, there are a lot of reports and YouTube videos that you can go into details, and on my channel I've put some of them on playlists, so you can watch at least 200 videos, because most of the information that I have gathered, I've mentioned to you now, I've gathered from those videos. And thank you so much for listening. And just to quickly have a look at this book, all right, which is using it as a reference. And thank you so much for listening, and have a nice day. And hopefully I'll try to make more videos as more news come out of this. But it's just that I felt that these videos are very important, because we, the vulnerable citizens, we pay a heavy price for these mistakes by these dictators. And thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.